Odyssey is an epic poem, a tale of heroic conflict. But it is not a tale with one single theme running all through it from beginning to end. It's a story with three different themes skillfully interwoven, and all three based on one central moral truth. Two of the themes are realistic. They're about recognizable people in situations which exist today, just as they existed 3,000 years ago.
One of these is the theme of the soldier, Odysseus, returning home. The second,
Telemachus, give me the bow, the mighty king,
is the theme of the young boy, Telemachus, growing up to become a man. But the third theme is not realistic. It is fantastic. The wanderings of Odysseus among witches and ghosts, giants and monsters, happen beyond the frontiers of real life.
Now, in all three themes, one great moral truth is worked out. It's this: even against terrible odds, intelligence will win if it is combined with bravery and determination. Courage plus cleverness cannot be beaten. It's not enough to be brave without brains. It's not enough to be clever without guts. Both are necessary, both brains and bravery. Telemachus develops them both. Odysseus has them both.
In his last battle, Odysseus faces the most fearful odds and wins. But before this terrible struggle with the suitors, he shows his heroism in a more difficult way, by letting himself be humbled. Dressed as a miserable beggar, he takes insults and abuse in his own house. And while others sleep warmly indoors, he has to lie down outside, wrapped in his cloak. At this point, even Homer ridicules his hero. As Odysseus lies there brooding on his revenge, Homer says,
"And so his heart obeyed him well, and was steadfast unflinchingly. But he lay tossing side to side, just as a man beside a hearty blazing fire holds out a huge sausage full of fat and blood, turning it back and forward, eager to have it grilled. So now Odysseus turned this way and that."
Of all the similes in the Odyssey, this is the most trivial. Homer wants even us to laugh at the untypical hero, rolling back and forward sleeplessly like a grilling sausage.
There is an old Greek saying, God helps those who help themselves. The god who helps Odysseus is Athena, Pallas Athena. She's the personification of wisdom, and so she naturally sides with the clever hero. Just so, in the Bible, God helps those who prove themselves worth helping. When Joshua, at the head of the Israelite army, is invading the promised land, the Bible says, the Lord delivered the enemy into Joshua's hands. In the Bible, God favors strong men and gives them greater strength. In the Odyssey, Athena favors an intelligent man and gives him greater wisdom. Even when, without knowing who she is, he tells her a lie, she admires him and favors him for it.
"I come from the Isle of Crete, far across the sea. I did a murder there. Now I am an outlaw."
Only a master of cunning, only a genius at deception could outdo you in trickery. Only the devil himself, you indefatigable cheat. Not even now, not even in your own home will you tell the truth. No, what you really love is complicated deceit. Come now, abandon these evasions. You and I are experts. You are best of all mortal men at plots and plans and storytelling. I am craftiest of all the gods. You did not know me, Pallas Athena, daughter of Zeus.
True goddess, you are difficult to recognize. And yet I remember well how gracious you were to me. Now, lady, weave a cunning plan for my revenge, and stand beside me breathing valor into my soul, as once when we destroyed the glittering crown of Troy. If now you will support me with such energy, my gray-eyed goddess, I can fight 300 men.
The first theme in the Odyssey, then, is one which has been developed time and time again since Homer, the return of the soldier, a lonely man coming home after long absence and struggling to throw interlopers out of his house and recapture the love of his family. The second theme also is common in Western literature, the problem of a boy growing into manhood. Young Telemachus, if he is to become a real man, has to break away from his mother and assert himself against the suitors who have invaded his home. He has to find his father and prove that he is a worthy son. It's Athena, goddess of wisdom, who helps him to grow up. She gives him guidance, but it is Telemachus himself who makes the effort. At first, he is in despair.
Lost. My father is lost to sight and knowledge, leaving tears and anguish to me. I have a life of misery. The noblemen and princes of the neighbor islands are paying court to my mother, wasting my household. She will neither refuse their vile offers nor yet bring the thing to an end. Meanwhile, they devour my home greedily, and one day soon they will destroy me too.
Poor boy, you surely need Odysseus, but let me tell you what your strategy should be.
Hey, Telemachus, come and join!
Tomorrow I set out for Sparta and for Pylos. Fill me 12 jars of wine and 20 pounds of flour, and keep this secret. I shall come for them this evening after my mother leaves the hall and goes to rest.
Oh, why, my boy? Whatever made you think of such a plan? How could you dream of traveling abroad? An only son, and so much loved. No, stay with us.
Comfort yourself, my dear. God is behind my plan. But swear you will not reveal this to my mother.
And thus, prompted by Athena, Telemachus sets out on his travels, the second stage of his education, to meet older, more experienced men and learn how to behave. The final stage in Telemachus' development, as shown by Homer, is to face opposition fearlessly, even at the risk of his life.
Telemachus, now is the time to face the battle. The final test of manliness and excellence. And learn how not to bring disgrace upon your fathers, whose strength and courage are renowned throughout the world.
Watch me, dear father, now, and you shall see my courage brings no dishonor on the house of brave Odysseus.
Now, at last, Telemachus is a man, like his father. Modern critics make a great deal out of his search for Odysseus. They treat it as a symbol of a universal experience. They say that every young man growing up has to search for his father and find him. Sometimes this means recognizing that his father is not a tyrant who wants to repress him, but a wise and friendly companion who wants to guide him. Sometimes it means breaking away from his mother and deciding to model himself on a man rather than remaining a protected child. But there's an interesting point here. None of the Greek and Roman critics who knew the Odyssey so well ever suggested that Telemachus' search for his father had a symbolic meaning. Does this mean that a symbolic interpretation is wrong?
What about the third theme of the Odyssey? The theme of the wanderings of Odysseus, his adventures with cannibal giants, enchanted islands, and supernatural beings. All the stories in this section are exciting. In every one of them, Odysseus shows the same courage and resource. Still, they are not at all like ordinary life. What are we to think of them?
I have a suggestion. You must have noticed how much trickery and disguising and downright lying there is in the Odyssey. In the other Homeric story, the Iliad, practically everyone speaks the truth straight out. But Odysseus in the Odyssey is one of the most remarkable liars of all time.
Now tell me truly, answer all my questions straight. Who are you? And your home and family, where are they? What sort of ship and sailor brought you overseas to Ithaca? I'm sure you did not come on foot.
Right, I shall answer all your questions truly. My story is a long one, though. I'll cut it short. In Crete, that spacious island, I was born and reared. The son of a rich man, Castor Hylacides, but illegitimate. After he died, my brothers split up his property and left me a poor pittance. So, I became a pirate, roaming the wide seas.
Enter, stranger.
Later, disguised as a beggar, Odysseus even tells an elaborate lie to his own wife, Penelope.
Now, stranger, answer me this question first of all. Who are you? And your home and parents, where are they?
My lady, very wise and beautiful are you, and famous far and wide, and much beloved too. I beg you do not ask about my home and family, lest I should break down and weep, remembering them.
I also have my sorrows, since I lost my husband. But tell me who you are. Come, where was your birthplace? You were not born of rocks and trees, as in the proverb.
Well, I shall tell you, deeply though it grieves me. Far off in Crete, there is a rich and famous city called Knossos. There King Minos ruled in days of old. His son, Deucalion, was my father. I am called Ethon. Once long ago, I saw Odysseus there. He was my guest at Knossos. I remember yet he wore a crimson cloak, double, with a gold clasp, showing a hound that clutched a dappled fawn, still struggling.
Inventions, tall tales, fictions. In fact, the whole Odyssey glorifies one side of the Greek character which is played down in the Iliad. The Greeks were clever. They admired an ingenious trickster. Now, what do you think? Are we supposed to believe all the stories Odysseus tells?
Now for 9 days, a northern tempest drove us on across wild seas. We reached a landfall on the 10th. Among the lotus eaters who get food from flowers, I sent 3 crewmen out on a reconnaissance. The Lotus Eaters did not try to kill the men, but gave them lotus fruits, sweet as honey in savor. When once they tasted that, they quite forgot their mission and wished to stay forever with the Lotus Eaters, feeding on lotus fruit and quite forgetting home. They wept when I arrested them and took them back to the ship and tied them up and threw them in the hold.
Wonderful stories, these. But are we supposed to believe them? Remember, Odysseus has no witnesses to prove or disprove what he says.
Now we sailed up the narrow channel, sick with fear. To port was the monster Scylla, to starboard Charybdis. With fearful roars she sucked the salt sea water down and belched it seething up again as high as the cliffs. As often as she sucked the salt sea water in, the boiling depths were all revealed. The crags around roared horribly, and down below in the abyss, dark earth and sand were seen. My men were panic-stricken. And while they watched Charybdis, waiting for their doom, the monster Scylla snatched 6 of my sailors up out of the ship. I saw their arms and legs struggling within her clutch. I heard them calling me. I watched them writhing while the monster lifted them and then devoured them all within her cave, screaming and stretching out their hands to me in agony. Of all my trials and afflictions on the sea, that was the grimmest sight and the most pitiful.
Can we be sure that Odysseus was not inventing all these stories like his fake autobiographies?
In hell among the damned, I saw King Tantalus condemned to stand in a lake. The water lapped at his chin. He thirsted for it madly, but could never drink. Whenever he bent down his head in eagerness, the water ebbed away to nothing, leaving only the dark earth around his feet, miraculously parched. Above his head grew lofty trees, heavy with fruit, pears, apples, figs, and olives, and sweet pomegranates. Whenever he stretched up his hand to grasp the fruit, a gust of wind would carry them away up to the sky.
Perhaps all the tales told by Odysseus were one gigantic confidence trick.
Then there was Sisyphus enduring punishment, pushing a monstrous rock uphill with all his might. With every muscle strained, he heaved it up and up, laboriously struggling. But when he was just about to reach the summit, gravity turned it back, and down with a rush and a roar, the ruthless rock rebounded.
If it was not a confidence trick played by Odysseus, it is certainly one by Homer himself. Long before his time, folk tales had been circulating around the world. He took a wide selection of these, attached them to the name and personality of our real hero Odysseus, and made the Odyssey. I believe he was the first man who deliberately made up a long story to give artistic pleasure to his hearers. If so, the Odyssey is the first real, extant piece of fiction in our world, the ancestor of all our novels and stories and romantic tales of adventure. It's a masterpiece of plot. But a plot alone will not make a great book. Homer is tremendously skillful at exploring the mysteries of human nature. The Odyssey is particularly good at characterizing different types of women.
There is, for example, a charming young princess, Nausicaa, who gives clothes and food to Odysseus when he is shipwrecked on her father's island. There is the lovely witch Circe, who tries to turn Odysseus into an animal, as she has already turned some of his crewmen. She fails. Then there's a glimpse of that exquisite beauty who started the whole thing. The Trojan War, the wanderings, and all the disasters and near disasters. Helen of Troy. And best of all the women, there's the faithful wife, Penelope, who, in her own way, is as clever and brave as her husband. But the characters of the men are even better done than the women, and there are more of them. The tough, brutal suitors. Nestor, wisest of the Greek kings, the king of the Phaeacians. Eumaeus, who, in spite of being a slave keeping pigs, is noble at heart and utterly loyal to Odysseus. And best of all, young Telemachus and his father.
Odysseus is a really complicated character. After he solves all the problems of getting back to Ithaca and reconquering his home, what do you think will happen? Will he settle down and live happily ever after? Can he settle down? Does he not personify the passionate love of roaming and exploration which is fixed in most men's hearts? 3 great poets thought he did. The English poet, Lord Tennyson, imagined Odysseus' thoughts just before he set sail once again.
I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees. I am become a name. Much have I seen and known. Cities of men and manners, climates, councils, governments, and drunk delight of battle with my peers far on the ringing plains of windy Troy. Yet all experience is an arch, wherethrough gleams the untraveled world, whose margin fades forever and forever when I move. It is not too late to seek a newer world. My purpose holds to sail beyond the sunsets and the baths of all the western stars until I die.
Five 500 years before Tennyson, the medieval Italian poet Dante, writing his vision of hell, saw Odysseus there among the damned. He was tormented in flame for inventing the wooden horse, and his soul, speaking with a tongue of living fire, told Dante that he had found it impossible to settle down. He had set out once again and sailed into the Atlantic Ocean.
We turned our back upon the morning star and flew with oars for wings towards the west. 5 times the moon had risen, 5 times set, when right ahead there loomed a mountain, dark and distant. Our world has no higher peak. We cheered to see it, then wept with terror. A hurricane roared out and struck our bow, whirled round the ship and the sea 3 times, and then the prow plunged down. Another took command. And so at last, the sea closed over us, and the light was gone.
In our own time, the poet of modern Greece, Nikos Kazantzakis wrote a still stranger sequel to the adventures of Odysseus. Its theme is the same as that of Dante, but its moral is the exact opposite. To push on into the unknown is not the damnation, but the salvation of man. Now, was Homer's Odysseus like this? Would he go off again?
We have not yet passed through the last frontier of all our troubles. I must suffer many more. Tiresias the prophet's ghost foretold it all, that day when I went down into the house of death. He ordered me to visit many lands and cities, walking and carrying with me the oar of a ship, until I reached a country where they did not know the sea and never heard of ships or saw an oar. And when I met a man who saw the oar on my shoulder and said it was a winnowing fan for threshing grain, then at last I could fix the oar in the ground and sacrifice and pray to Poseidon, Lord of the sea. And then I can come home and pray to the gods and rest among my people, calm and happy. This is my fate.